On this episode of Broadcasting Seeds, we welcome Brandy Anderson. Brandy is an author, spiritual director, and Jungian coach on an ever-winding contemplative path of becoming. Brandy spent many years wrestling with existential questions in a Christian context and came away with answers that she found less than satisfying. Brandy's desire for truth at all costs sent her on a journey of deep study and contemplation that ultimately brought her into a more contemplative spirituality. From this contemplative space, Brandy had a paranormal experience that served to bring things into sharp focus with existential clarity. In her book, Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, Brandy shares insights concerning what happens when we die and how that should impact the way we live life now. This book sheds new light on many traditional spiritual beliefs, including karma, the meaning of life, and reincarnation. Through the Veil is available now on Amazon. Welcome, Brandy Anderson, to Broadcasting Seeds. Brandy Anderson, thanks for coming on Broadcasting Seeds.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here today.
So, all right, give us a little background about what, this is Broadcasting Seeds. What brings you here? You have a book. I'd like you to talk about that first, if you could, and then explain that, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So my book is Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, and it was born out of a paranormal experience that kind of punctuated a spiritual awakening that I had. Back in 2014, I had a spiritual awakening that sent me on a path of seeking out ultimate truth. And so I plugged into a few churches along the way, and because I was coming from a Christian context, my family would identify as Christian. So that's just the doorway that I entered into this spiritual journey. And so I began sifting through all of the different theological and philosophical nuances in my search for truth. And ultimately, I found mainstream Christian answers to life's most important questions less than satisfying. And I shifted into a more contemplative space where, it was just a lot more room for mystery. Less conceptual, more experiential, still Christian, but just more mystical in tone. And from that space, my grandmother, who was 95, she died. She came to the end of her life and she died. And when she crossed, I should back up and say that when my grandmother was nearing the end, she was afraid to die. She had an aversion to death. And so in her resistance, as she was crossing, she created a portal. So when people are nearing the end of their physical lives, the veil between the spiritual and the physical becomes thin, which is why a lot of people on their deathbeds will report to seeing loved ones who have already crossed and communicating with people who aren't physically in the room. But at the moment of death, the veil that is already thin opens and creates what's called a portal, and the spirit just slips from the physical into the spiritual, and it's usually an instantaneous phenomenon. But my grandmother was resisting when she crossed. So in her resistance, her portal remained open, and she got unstuck. She was kind of stuck between two realities initially, but pretty quickly she became unstuck. She was able to move on through the portal and get some perspective about her situation. But because she had this open portal, it allowed her to be able to manipulate the physical realm in ways that she would not have been able to without that portal. And so maybe a month or two after she crossed, she turned the television on. It's a Roku smart TV. She navigated to the search, like the search bar, and she typed the word hello. And my family who live in the house were horrified. They immediately ran out screaming in fright. So the TV shut off. Yeah, in their terror, the TV stopped. And then a couple days went by, no activity. And then after a couple days, again, the TV popped on by itself, navigated to search. But this time the word love appeared in the search bar. But still, my family, they were horrified. They did not receive it as a loving communication. They were too terrified to engage with it. So this continued to persist, and they had called me about it. They were upset over it. They didn't understand what was happening. They were afraid that it was something malevolent. And my initial thought was that it must be someone, a hacker, like someone in the physical realm who has hacked into the television, who's playing a distasteful prank, maybe. And so, but they prayed and they saged and they cleansed the house, like in case it was something spiritual. But these attempts to communicate just kept happening. They persisted, no matter the praying, the saging, the commanding any evil to leave. So eventually I said, why don't we engage with it and try to get to the bottom of what's going on here? If it is someone in the physical, we need to stop this. We need to figure out how they're doing this and put a stop to it. So I came over, and my mom was with me. And there were probably 4 or 5 of us, and the television popped on by itself, navigated to the search. And again, the word hello, I think it might have been love, but I think it was hello. And so we began to engage with whoever it was tentatively. And we pretty quickly realized that it could not be someone in the physical realm, because whoever it was could read our thoughts. And so as soon as we realized that whoever it was reading our thoughts, like they were issuing answers to questions we had not articulated yet, they were still in our heads. And so I said, can you read our thoughts? And she said, yes. And so we began to test it. We would think something and wait for the response. And lo and behold, every time. So once we realized that it was indeed something spiritual, not someone in the physical, then we were concerned, is this really Granny? Is it a hacker? I mean, is it something malevolent? Not a hacker, but is it someone, something malevolent?
Yeah, like a demon or just something. Right.
Yeah. And so, and coming from a Christian background, my family, they were really rattled by this because, in some Christian circles, they would say, oh, it's impossible to talk to your loved ones. It's always a demon. And
like, why would they even want to be here talking to you when they could be in heaven?
Right. Yeah. They believe, that people go to a geographical location called heaven and that they can't communicate. Yeah. So all of that was swirling around in our thoughts at the time that we were communicating. So, but as we did tentatively engage with whoever it was, it became clear that it wasn't a demon at all. It was my grandmother, and it was her love and devotion to particular family members that really brought it into sharp focus for us. She apologized for some past hurts. Said some things that needed to be said. She could see, because when you cross, you have a vantage point that, like, you can see with clarity into the heart of situations and people. Nothing is hidden on the other side. You can see everything. And so she was able to see some destructive patterns in some loved ones' lives. And she spoke into that in a way that brought healing and reconciliation, probably saved some lives in that instance. She could see someone struggling with mental health issues. She spoke to that in a way that brought healing, that was really helpful. Again, saved lives. So all of the communication was geared toward, health and reconciliation and wholeness.
And positive things, right?
Yeah.
Because that was kind of my question was there anything negative? Because that's kind of a sign, right?
Right. Yeah. Because if it's something malevolent, they may pose as a loved one initially, but pretty quickly they do something to incite
because they don't want
fear.
you to be happy.
Right. They want to tear you down. They want to create dissension and sow seeds of dissension and fear. It's very fear-based. But no, everything was it gave us such a peace and comfort. The more we communicated, the more peaceful and more comforted we felt. And even when she spoke into these like destructive patterns in people's lives, even, when she addressed, behaviors that people were, caught up in that are not ideal. It's not what you would want for your loved ones. She did so with love and compassion. direct and truthful. I mean, it was truth, and truth can be harsh, but it wasn't frightening or, off-putting. It was very comforting and healing. So yeah, everything about the communication was just wrapped in love. And over the course of, it's been 3 years now. So we've had sustained communication with her for 3 years, and the fruit of it has been nothing but good. Jesus said, you will know them by their fruit. And so the fruit has been nothing but good consistently. Nothing about it has ever, been, troubling in any way or given us pause to think that it might be something malevolent.
Gotcha. Do you ever ask her questions? Like,
Oh, yeah. Tons
you know
of
what I mean?
questions.
No, not like, but like, hey, who's going to win the election tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Does she have answers though? This is the question.
Sometimes. So initially, she stayed because she wanted to, like I said, heal those relationships. She could see where people were struggling, and she desperately wanted to bring healing. She wanted to offer some words of correction and wisdom. That was her motivation in staying. And she continues to stay because of her great love and devotion to those people, her connection, relational connection, her love. But I am a nerd and I'm on a spiritual journey. And so I am loaded with questions, right? I mean, I had spent since my spiritual awakening, I had been wrestling with all these philosophical and theological questions. And then, you go down these rabbit holes as you're studying things out. And so I am filled with questions. And so, I took the opportunity to ask her some things that she didn't stay to volunteer this information to me, but graciously she has obliged me in asking her some of these, and she does answer a good many of them. Although some questions she will say no say, which means sometimes it's because there are no words to convey what she would need to. Like my finite brain cannot comprehend the unfathomable. Yeah. So some things she just can't put into words, but some things she will say you're not supposed to know. But as far as like who is going to win the election, we have asked that. They don't know because the future is fluid, according to my grandmother. And
right?
Yeah, so things are always kind of, they can tell you where it's leaning in the moment. Like, like they can see the momentum in the moment, like where it's leaning, but that can change because people can change their minds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know why that's just the one thing to put
Yeah.
in my head, considering it's tomorrow. So
Yeah, it's a good question.
You like with your the book, you discuss the concept of karma extensively, right?
Yeah,
And so this is something that's always, it's a rabbit hole I go down periodically. So how did you come to this understanding about karma, and how does it affect your approach, like with relationships, personal growth, things like that?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, and karma is really a part of Christianity,
Right.
but is not called karma. So
No, it is
yeah,
not. But yes.
But an eye for an eye, that kind of, and Jesus spoke into that in a way. Yeah. So it's clearly you reap what you sow. So that's like more biblical or whatever. But I began to see that that karma is not. We don't get what we desire. We get, or we don't get what we deserve. We get what we're a vibrational match for. And so when you begin to see that everything is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed, and we are all energy, you begin to see that we are all interconnected in a way that our vibration is interconnected with other people, because really there are no others. We are all just one consciousness having this very human experience. And so, yeah, you begin to see that karma is just it's just an opportunity for you to awaken. That's what it is. Karma allows us the opportunity, unlimited, continual, perpetual. I mean, I always say that that all of life is designed to awaken you. And that's really the truth of it. And that's what karma is. It's these cycles that invite us into an opportunity to step outside of ourselves, transcend the ego, and realize our oneness with God and others.
Gotcha. So, like conventional Christian beliefs, right? And you've kind of gone, you've become more contemplative spiritually, right?
Yeah.
So, what challenges or insights did you face on that path and how has it affected your relationship with traditional religious practices? Like, because I'm sure you have family members that are like, what in the,
Yeah.
because, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my initial search, coming through the church, I really took the time to iron out. I'm one of those people, I don't take things just, I wouldn't take it at someone's word that this, like I want to study it for myself. And so as I plugged into these churches in search of ultimate truth, and I will say that at my spiritual awakening, I was like just immersed in this peace. It was a very explicit moment where I felt a peace that was indescribable. And so as I plugged into churches to try to find, I was like, this is God, and I want a context for what has happened to me. So I began to study things out, and pretty quickly I realized that mainstream religion is fear-based. And, and there's nothing peaceful about it. It's very anxiety inducing, really. And it also keeps you kind of separated from yourself. I began to see that, they'll say, you can't trust yourself. Well, the heart is deceitful above all things. They'll quote that scripture. And it keeps people separated from their intuitive knowing, their voice, the voice inside, that the spirit that leads from inside. And so, yeah, I began to just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I studied those things out for myself, like I said, in depth, like the views on hell. You have the traditional, I say traditional, it's not really the traditional, but it's the mainstream view now, like the eternal conscious torment view. That's the one that's probably the most popular. And then, from there, I began to see that some people believe that that the wicked dead perish, like they're annihilated, which is conditionalism. And so, like, I studied that out. And then, the ultimate reconciliation is another view where everyone will be reconciled. And so, as I began to entertain these other views and study them out through Scripture, I began to see that there's precious little support for eternal conscious torment. It just really, I mean, there may be a handful of verses, and they really crumble if you really drill down into them and study them out properly. So yeah, I had already kind of shifted away. It was kind of a journey, like an evolution. I began in one spot, in my journey, just seeking things out, and I just followed the breadcrumbs. And I feel like a lot of people just stop. They plug into the church, they listen to whatever the preacher tells them, and that's that. It really is a huge impediment. I believe that oftentimes mainstream church is an actual impediment to transformation instead of, and it can be a catalyst into transformation. It can cause an awakening. I mean, anything can, but oftentimes people think, oh, I have it. I prayed the prayer. I'm going to heaven when I die. That's it. And no more seeking. They think that, I'm saved and that's that. And sadly, a lot of people are just really gripped with anxieties, and they're out of alignment interiorly because they haven't, pressed into the numinous that is beyond all of that. As far as my relationship with religion, I would say, yeah, it's, I try to have grace for that. I don't want to be one of those that, I've come to the other side of it, so to speak. I've like went over that wall, and I don't want to turn around and judge those who are still there, because I believe it's a necessary part of the journey. We all kind of pass through those lower levels of consciousness, and those, different ways of sort of, I don't know, making sense of the divine, we've all been in that space where we would maybe view God as a Zeus-like deity, or like a Santa Claus in the sky, a man, with a white beard in the sky, raining down lightning bolts on people. We all pass through that. And I think it's a necessary part of our, conscious evolution. So in my perspective, I try to have grace for people who are in that, although I would say that most of those people wouldn't have grace for me. People in that space tend to be very, very dogmatic, very judgmental of anyone outside of their box. It's like turn or burn. If you don't conform, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're going to hell for all eternity. So it's very fear-based, and it's very dualistic. So it's hard to engage with people who are stuck, in that dualism like that. And I do have some family members who would be opposed to the things that they believe differently than I do. They're still very much immersed in that evangelical mainstream kind of religion, and that's okay. I believe that people are where they are on their journey, and we're all in a different place. And it's not about me converting anyone. It's not about me changing anyone's mind. It's about me being true to myself, living out my inner integrity, and trying to operate from love, because that's really what it is, right? I mean, it's, what's the most loving thing I could do or say in any moment? That's really it. And so if I could just learn to extend grace and love and compassion, no matter what someone believes, then that's my journey. That's my job.
So I feel like so many people are just like stuck in this. And I say Christians, because that's what I really, really know. I feel like they're stuck in this perpetual cycle of just waiting to die and go to heaven.
Yeah.
Right? Instead
Yeah.
of going on a journey in this life that we live. And I believe that this is why we're here. I believe like that we are eternal overall, our soul, right? And we're part of a bigger, whatever you want to call it, right? Bigger universe, right? And that we're here as part of the journey, as a learning experience, right? And to learn, I feel like people just sit back and try to live as little of a pain-free life as possible, right?
Yeah.
When I've learned in my life that pain is when you learn, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just physical pain. It can be emotional. It's all the pain, in all its forms, and that's how we learn, right? So either way, I mean, that's just my opinion, and those are like, everybody's got them. So
Yeah. That
uh,
it really resonates, though.
um but as it speaks for like, and I don't really mean religion per se. It's Does one tradition speak to you more than others? Just the different perspectives and how to reconcile between those. Does something speak to you like in your heart more than others?
Yeah, I would say I am not currently active. I'm not plugged into any churches right now. But if I were going to attend church, it would be the Episcopal Church. I mean, there's a wide array of beliefs within there's room for all different beliefs within the Episcopal tradition. They're affirming, and they're welcoming. And I think that they follow a liturgical calendar. And I believe that the liturgy is a beautiful way to worship. Because oftentimes in these evangelical churches, especially like these non-denominational, well, any of them really, the sermon is the center of the service. And so you come in and you spend the first few minutes or whatever singing songs, which they call that worship, which I would argue that, worship is not singing a song. It's the way you live your life. But they have the worship section, portion, and then that's followed by this lengthy sermon, which is the centerpiece. And the sermon is really, it's, that preacher's personal views, his own projections, and his own psyche is being projected onto that material. And so, while it may be helpful to hear those kinds of messages, and I'm not saying that people can't grow and learn and benefit from that, the liturgy follows a particular scripture. And so, because there is a liturgy and it's all written in a way to evoke worship, it's supposed to get us out of the way, like the person, the human, the ego out of the way, so that it's, just facilitating, you and God, so that you can use that to kind of usher yourself into the presence of God, which we're always in the presence of God, but our awareness of it, so we can shift our awareness into the divine. And also the actual homily, the sermon part, is very short. and the podium is off to the side because it is not the centerpiece. The mass is the centerpiece. And I think it's beautiful. If if you, as a Christian, if you're looking for a beautiful way to worship and maybe you feel disenchanted with religion or whatever, give the Episcopals a try. I mean, I love the atmosphere there.
Gotcha. So it's a question I ask all my guests. So I think you're gay. I think I know the answer to but you never know. So, all right. So this whole wacky world that we call high strangeness or we got cryptids, we got supernatural, we got paranormal, we got UFOs, got the whole gamut of crazy, right? And that's what I'll call it, right? Yep. So you're kind of in this world, whether you want to be or not at this point. What was this your gateway into this world, or was it like Bigfoot? Mine was Bigfoot. So for example, mine was actually Bigfoot. I had an experience when I was younger, and I've had a couple more since then. I'm just wondering, like, what's your gateway? And a lot of times I'd call it the gateway drug into the this crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, that's a good question. The experience with my grandmother was the gateway, I would say. Prior to that, I had never attempted to contact the other side. So I was not, involved in any paranormal activities. I didn't, I didn't do any paranormal investigation stuff. I wasn't really, in fact, coming from a Christian tradition, I would have thought that it was dangerous. And I just never did, press into that. And I had not ever had anything to speak of, like as far as an experience with any other like UFO or Bigfoot, anything like that. So yeah, it was definitely, when my grandmother, when she pushed her way back into space and time and typed words on the TV, that was definitely the opening into, and at this point, it's funny because after talking to my grandmother for about 3 years, and some of the things I've asked her will be like, is this real or does this really exist? And when she'll say yes, and we're mind blown. It's like, wow, really? I'm like, what even is this world that we live in? I am really, to embrace mystery is the only way forward, because it's beyond and when we try to rationalize it, conceptualize it, you can't.
You just can't, right?
Yeah, it's mysterious. And I told my mom the other day, I was like a dragon. I could be driving along and see a dragon floating across the sky and be like, oh, okay, so we're doing this now.
And it wouldn't even shock you, right?
Right.
Like, okay, this just happened.
Yeah, dragons are here. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like my next question, is because as an earthbound spirit, like, this story is very compelling. Now, is she earthbound, or does she have access to both?
Yeah, she has access to both. And I hear people talk about earthbound spirits being like stuck. And I mean, people can be stuck. Yeah. But a lot of the like these haunted places with poltergeist activities, where people are scratched or bitten, or it's clearly like bad energy. Because scary things are happening. Those people, I mean, some may be stuck, because it is possible to be stuck, but oftentimes they're not stuck so much as they're choosing to stay. And so my grandmother, she is not stuck, and she has actually crossed through her portal. So she's in the quantum realm, but she can use her portal as a doorway, so to speak, to manipulate the physical, which allows her to be able to communicate to us. And she can type words on, any electronic device, really. She uses printers, so she can print out. If she wants to say a lot, she will use the printer, because she can say more words, like full on sentences and paragraphs on the printer. But she could also, if she wanted, just go on into the beyond, is what she calls it, which is, just further away from the earthly or astral plane.
Right. So the communication that you've had, what has it really taught you about the afterlife, though? Like the beyond, maybe? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the afterlife.
Well, she has said that, that the beyond is, vast and highly stratified. And it's one of those things that's beyond being able to put into words. Like there's just, it's indescribable. And it's also so vast. There's no one particular way that it is. You couldn't say, well, this is what the afterlife is like, period, because every person's experience of it will be subjective. Kind of like this earthly realm, we all have our own subjective experience. You and I could go to a museum, view the same art pieces, and come away with totally different perspectives and be moved in different ways. And the afterlife is the same. But I would say the one thing I've learned, the one thing that really just is the point is just driven home to me over and over again, is the importance of doing our inner work now. Like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. It's within you. So it's not out there. Heaven is not a place we're going to. It's a place we come from. And we can cultivate that right now. And my grandmother has made it explicitly clear that it's much better if we do our inner work now. Because when we wait, it's more painful to do it on the other side. And although we do it on the other side, we do continue to grow and evolve. And, there's no place called hell where people go for all eternity to be punished for, sin. But there are, she describes a fire that we all pass through, which is a purifying or cleansing fire. And so it's not like an eternal conscious torment kind of fire, but it's cleansing. And that can be particularly painful if we haven't let go of those ego constructs in this physical life. But that's what, karma and reincarnation, it's all really a testament to the grace of God, because we are not given just one short life to get it right, or we burn eternally, because that's a very nihilistic view when you stop and think about it. We're actually afforded multiple, endless opportunities. God's grace, it's a testament to the grace of God that we continue to cycle through these lives, and we continue to learn our lessons and evolve and grow. And it's not about punishment. It's about, cleansing, about coming into alignment interiorly.
Is it our choice?
Always. There's always a choice. We have, freedom here to make choices in the physical realm. Although, free will is one of those, it's kind of a conundrum. It's kind of a contradiction in terms, because there's freedom and then there's will, but there is no actual free will, because our will is part of the ego structure, and therefore it is driven by our unconscious compulsions. We may think we're making a free choice, but it's our own ego, our conditioning is really making that choice. It's that undercurrent that's driving us to, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so that it's all of that conditioning that we've acquired over a lifetime. But once we do transcend the ego, which that's the whole point of doing the inner work, that's what Jesus was talking about over and over again. It's about, take up your cross and follow me. Well, the cross is an instrument of death. It's about dying to that ego self. And so when we do that, we do continue on our journey, in a way that brings us into that inner alignment.
Yes. Super interesting.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. So you hear oftentimes, like, there's oh my gosh, I wish I remembered the name of that podcast. There's a lot of near-death experience stuff with it, but there's also folks that have like gone over and then come back. So I guess it's all near-death experiences, right? Yeah. And they're just shown all sorts of things, and there always seems to be congruency with their stories for the most part, right? And with like your story here, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be congruency in that. So it's hard to hear like people be like, and even like people that are really smart and really, they seem to be, at least, say that nope, no matter what, like if they're typing on that Roku on that TV, they are a demon.
Yeah.
Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it to them. And it's so hard to be that rigid. I think that's just my opinion. But some people, that's just how they live, right? And and I just wish that there was a way to, don't we all, right?
Yeah.
Wish that there's a way to just know. But it's people like you with your stories where, I mean, you guys are all pretty convinced, right? And there's been convincing behavior. And after 3 years of like no malevolent action, I mean, unless that spirit's playing a long game.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At this point, it's
Right.
hard to discount it, I would say.
Yeah. And I think, people often are closed to it because it would require that they use discernment. See, if you have a doctrine that, an ideology that says, any kind of spirit communication is the devil. That just really puts it into categories of black and white. There's no middle ground there. So if all of it is just off limits, then, that's very easy. You don't have to use your
Yeah, you
discernment.
don't have to think a
You don't have
whole.
to think anymore. And
Well, that's kind of religion in general, right?
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
very
organized religion, not all, and not every aspect of all.
right.
But yes, discernment is a very good way
Right. Yeah.
to describe
And,
it.
and like you were saying, these are intelligent people. It's just that, that they're caught in that, I don't know whether it's fear or what that drives people into these spaces. But, even the Bible, because they will say that, oh, it's impossible to contact spirits. If you're talking to a spirit, it's definitely a demon. But in the Bible, there's the account of Saul conjuring Samuel through a medium, and he talks to her. He talks to him. He has an actual conversation. Samuel's kind of ticked. He's like, hey, why are you bothering me? He's
Right.
aggravated that he's being bothered. And he answers Saul. So, but they will say, oh, that's a demon. And I'm like, that's funny. It doesn't say it in the text. Like,
It doesn't say in the Bible that it's
in the Bible, it says it's
Saul.
Samuel and
Samuel.
Saul. Yeah. And then you have the transfiguration event where Elijah and Moses appeared and spoke with Jesus. They manifested. So these are two long dead ancestors, two long dead prophets. And they manifested in a way that not just Jesus, but the disciples saw them. Peter was ready to build a tent for all three of them. So, so you over and over again in scripture, you have also, I will say that, there are the scriptures that say, do not consult mediums. In the Old Testament, as part of, one of the stipulations for the Israelites, which there are a lot of things they were prohibited from doing, like eating shellfish or wearing mixed fabrics, or, they had to keep the Sabbath, things like that. There were all these different rules and guidelines for that particular people in that particular time. But I would say, though, that the fact that there is a prohibition indicates that it is possible. Why would you say do not consult the dead if you can't consult the dead? There would be no reason to say it. And the scriptures they don't say, if you consult the dead, you're really consulting demons. It just says don't consult the dead. So I think it's just cognitive dissonance. I think people just want to believe whatever it is they believe, and so they find scriptures to support that view, and then they don't think about it any further.
And it doesn't mean that demons don't use these mediums, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just heard a story about a priest who literally gets texts from demons.
Oh, wow.
Could you imagine?
That's creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he knows it's just the blasphemous language that they use and what they're saying. And who knows, right? But allegedly that's what he says. He's also an exorcist. So he's kind of on the front lines of all this, right? But he's also one of the people that would say that if you're talking to like a medium, or you're talking to something through whatever, that it is a demon. There's like, in his mind, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So
yeah,
it's.
And I mean, well,
it's
there
tough.
are demons, and here's the thing.
For
also,
sure, there's demons.
And I will say that if I would say that it is dangerous to just take a blind stab into the spirit realm. Like playing with Ouija boards, for instance, that can open a portal. And if it opens a portal, it's likely not someone you want to communicate with on the other side, because, they're just like here, there are good and bad, energies on this side. There are also good and bad energies on the other side. And when you can't see or intuit into that realm, you don't know. Like, you really don't. You could be opening up something awful. And so
you start piercing that veil.
Yeah. And so I would just issue that caution that I don't, my grandmother even says, never do such as that. And I've asked her about certain places, like, certain, like a hotel or an old asylum, or just different places that people you see on TV. I'll ask, hey, what's going on with that place? And she will say, it's very bad. Never go there. Like she'll warn, like
It's
you could
very
get,
bad.
yeah, you could be like a spirit really could overtake you and harm you physically.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you play with that.
Yeah. So if you had one takeaway, you hope readers of your book gain from Through the Veil, what would that be?
It's that death is just the doorway into an expansive journey of becoming whole. We don't die. Death is an illusion. We continue on in our journeys. And also, I think this is important. This is something that has been circling around in my psyche for the past week or so. Life is not a destination, it is a journey. And so every moment is pregnant with potential. We are all in flux. And we continue that. That doesn't stop at physical death. We continue on in our journey. We continue to learn and grow. And all of life is benevolently flowing toward us in every moment in ways to awaken us and to pull us into alignment. And all of life is designed to awaken us. So I would just say, relax and enjoy the journey.
Relax, right?
Yeah.
So are there other spiritual themes or personal experiences that you're exploring for like maybe future projects? Other
Yeah.
books, maybe? Things like
Yeah.
that?
I have barely started, so it's very much in the early works. A book with a friend where we will co-author a book together, and it will be about doing shadow work. It's like inner alchemy. It's basically how do we come into alignment? How do we live out this kingdom of heaven? How do we tap into that and consistently live from that place of integrity? A love really is what it is. So that's next up. And I have some other ideas kind of swirling around. I may end up doing a kind of a question and answer format book, because since I wrote Through the Veil, there have been a lot of, other interesting topics, other questions people have asked. And so I may compile, questions and answers in a book.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it. It's amazing. So let's see. I feel like I've kind of covered everything that I wanted to cover. What about you? Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
So where can people find you? Like what are your socials? What are your where can they buy your book? All the things. I mean, and I'll put everything in the show notes too.
Okay, yeah. Well, my website is brandyanderson.net. And from there are links to all of my socials. And my handle on all of my socials is Brandy the Mystic. And my book, Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, is available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. And it's a Quire publication.
Brandy with a Y, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Brandy the Mystic. Okay. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
It's a great topic and great story. So, and I haven't, full disclosure, I didn't read the whole book. I got through about half of it. But I'm going to finish it, and it's pretty awesome. I have to, it's definitely a different book than what I usually read. So it's enlightening, to say the least. So,
well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you for taking the time to read it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sending it to me. So,
yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, any last words?
No, I guess, I guess that's it.
Just, it's all about love, right?
Yeah, it's all about love.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me away cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown.